Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, July 19th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of the Times. We've got our full crew on hand today. Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of the Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling. Welcome
Thank you,
back,
Robert.
Mark.
Thank you.
Let's get started. Jumping into the lawsuit that battle that was going on between the state of Indiana and IBM over the failed welfare automation program that the state had attempted to do with IBM. Didn't work. The state basically said, forget it, we're scrapping it, getting out of it. IBM sued to recoup the lost, what they expected to get. And a judge delivered his verdict. What was that verdict?
The verdict
Doug?
was, I want to read this. He says, neither party deserves to win this case. That's his exact words.
Well, that tells you something
He
right
found
there.
for Indiana, against Indiana, found for IBM. But he said, this story represents a perfect storm of misguided government policy and overzealous corporate ambition. Overall, both parties are to blame, and Indiana's taxpayers are left as apparent losers.
Now,
So-
by the way, we're talking to a judge. What at what level has this?
Marion Superior Court.
Okay,
So
it's-
this is
it's
going to get
still-
appealed.
Yeah. This is not the final word.
Right, this is not the final word. That's going to go all the way to the state Supreme Court, That's
If not
just-
beyond, IBM has the money to take it wherever they want to take it.
Well, although you have to, make a federal case out of it to make it a federal case.
Well,
So-
Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals is full of federal cases, so.
And while the judge said there were no winners in the case, he did define the losers of the case being Indiana taxpayers.
Right, and he, Indiana got, the final judgment was something like 52 million and change. 12 million actual penalty, but I think there was the 40 million in IBM equipment that never got returned, or that kind of crazy thing. So there was that, but basically what this all came down to was Governor Daniels is big on privatization. Did the major moves thing, that did the toll road, and we'll come back to that later in the show. But this is a case where doing a social service that involves
This is
human
welfare
interaction.
intake, so it's
Yeah,
people that are
it's-
entering the welfare system
Yeah.
that need, whether it's food assistance or other.
Right, and so there's high
Medical
tech
assistance.
versus high touch, and this is one of those high touch situations where just calling into a call center isn't going to cut it. So.
So what do you see as the next logical step here?
Next logical step I see is that this case is going to get appealed, and it'll be probably could even be years before we get a final ruling, but easily many months.
And it's interesting, it could pull Mitch Daniels back into court, long
Well,
after his governor's
in
term as
theory.
governor is over.
In theory, although there were the testimony in this case already amounted to something, I think they said 1 million pages.
Yeah.
So I
A
mean there's
million pages?
a million pages. So
lot
they
of
say
pages.
if you at $1 a copy, if you want documents, you're smarter to go down there with a flash drive.
Right, right.
So
Shifting gears to Lake County politics, there's some kind of interesting political moves going on this week. We had, and it began late last week when Mayor Tom McDermott, who's also chairman of the Lake County Democratic Party, kind of raised a bit of a stink over one of his appointees to the Lake County Election Board.
Greg Sanchez.
right, and this was he appoints the guy to the Lake County Election Board, and then the guy his appointee, McDermott's appointee from Hammond, then gets a job in the Lake County Surveyor's office.
Not just a job, but he's second in command.
Right. So
And-
then there's
And I think we should explain to our audience here that the mayor and the surveyor,
George Van Til.
Tom McDermott and George Van Til are, although the same party, not the best of friends. And I think that little laugh said it all. Yeah, that's.
And there are other kind of conflict of interest, potential conflict of interest involved here, because George Van Til may have a case coming before the election board.
Right. And so,
if his second in command is sitting on that election board, it's
Well, there's always the possibility that he could recuse himself.
right.
So,
Which
But
it won't be necessary because the development this week was that he stepped down
Right.
from the election board.
but there is the possibility that he could have recused himself. I mean, that's not an unprecedented move.
Not unprecedented, but, why do you want somebody who's, beholden to someone or to someone's there? You have split allegiances. It just was trouble in the making,
Yeah.
so.
Meanwhile, George Van Til has been very busy this week with new drainage projects starting, and
Oh, absolutely.
so he's kind of trying to say, I'm doing my job, and probably trying to lay low politically because obviously he's got the federal raid
Right.
that happened some time ago that's kind of hanging out there still. So
It's still hanging out there, but nothing's happened yet.
yeah,
Well, and nothing does happen for, months and months after something like that.
Mhm.
Takes time to sift through all of that, and the crazy thing about it is, even if the feds decide there's nothing there, they don't say there's nothing there.
Right.
They just leave it hanging, and so,
Now, is that fair to
There
a
you go.
candidate? That's the question.
well, and he's up for election in the fall.
Yeah,
Eric
exactly.
Krieg is
Mhm.
running against him,
Right.
the Republican, and so,
Well, and then there's always the possibility that, McDermott's asking him to step down, and there's always the possibility that McDermott is
he's
party
asking
chairman.
Van Til to step.
Yeah,
step
right,
down.
correct.
Right.
There's always the possibility that he could appoint someone to take the Democratic nomination as surveyor.
well, Van Til said he's,
Right.
anyway, so, he already refused to step down.
Right. There's a fear among Democrats that you'll have another repeat of the Carol Ann Seton situation where she kind of got embroiled in this kind of bit of a scandal leading up to the election. The Republicans ended up taking the position. Hank
Right.
Adams won as Lake County Assessor.
A couple major differences there, though, I would say, are that in the Carol Ann Seton situation, she had actually been charged with a felony at the time. She had not been convicted, but you can't run as a convicted felon. But she had been charged with a felony at the time of the election. George Van Til has not been charged with anything.
Correct.
And the second thing was that Carol Ann Seton was not the party's choice to be the nominee.
Nor was she an incumbent. She wasn't in
Nor was
office, so-
she incumbent.
Yeah, she was the
Yeah.
party's choice, but not the party, leader's choice.
Well,
She won the primary.
She
is what
won the
you're saying.
primary. She won the primary, but she ran against Randy Guernsey, the Ross Township assessor, who was the party's, who had the party's backing, and I think it shocked a lot of people that he didn't win. And when he didn't win, she really did not get a whole lot of party support. Now,
Although she came close to winning.
and that's a very good point. Even under felony charges, which of course in Lake County is like the equivalent of having the sniffles. Even under felony charges, she came extremely close to Hank Adams, who and I'm not saying Carol Seton was an unqualified candidate. She was in the Peterborough
Yeah.
Property Tax
She had the
Board
knowledge
of Appeals.
to do the job.
Yeah, but Hank Adams was the St. John Township assessor, had been for years, and certainly had the expertise to do the job. So you had a highly qualified Republican versus a qualified Democrat who did not have party backing and was facing felony charges.
Once again, we get into these non-policy making
Yeah.
jobs that end up being political when really they should be appointed. They
Yeah,
should
I
be.
mean,
Right.
the question is,
Yeah.
should we even have an elected surveyor? Should we have
Exactly.
Should we have an elected
Exactly.
coroner, or should we have a medical examiner? A lot of counties have just.
If you're not
moved-
making policy, what reason is there to be
Correct.
elected?
Right.
That's a very
Yeah.
good question.
Um,
You're there to do a job. You're not there to
Right.
be necessarily political.
Right.
Right. Let's talk about, Doug, you and I were at a luncheon yesterday. That was, we heard a presentation by Bill Hanna, who is the leader of the Regional Development Authority, and he talked about what the RDA has been doing, what they're looking to do, kind of what they've accomplished. Doug, you want to talk a little bit about that?
You know, there were two major things I think he said. One is that now that the major moves money is pretty well majorly moved into projects and you know,
It's-
dissipated by
Majority
now.
has moved out. yeah.
Exactly. Now that money is, you know, pretty well dried up, the state share, you know, has been $10 million a year. So now the question is the state going to cough up $10 million from another source? And so they're going to be lobbying the state for it, saying, you know, look, we can prove we've got
Yeah.
a good return on your investment. Keep giving us the money.
Yeah, and it was interesting, he said, you know, we're not asking for a handout, we're saying this is a good investment, that you will get
Right.
more than your money back
Right.
if you put your money into the RDA. And he showed, you know, what they've been able to leverage in terms of all the projects that they've done, and the amount of, you know, both federal and you know, some private funds that they've been able to leverage to make a lot of those market plan projects happen.
Right. Now the other part of that is the RDA is charged statutorily with you know, basically 5 major responsibilities. One was regional bus consolidation. One was expansion of commuter rail service. One was expansion of the Gary Chicago International Airport. One was the Marquette plan stuff that's, you know,
Reclaiming,
well underway.
the lake shore.
Exactly,
Which-
for public use.
Right.
And then 5 was the none of the above as long as it's related to economic development.
Right.
So the two big ones that are left undone, and keeping in mind, they've only been around 7 years, but the two big ones undone are the two that deal with surface transportation,
The bus and rail.
the bus and rail. And so Bill Hanna was saying maybe, you know, it's time to put those two together. I'm not sure about that. We saw what happened when the Regional Transportation Authority was proposed, and there was the referendum on that in some counties that decided to actually hold the referendum, and it just, you know, got blown away.
Down in flames, yeah.
Exactly. So,
Well, what do you think about rail transportation expansion? I mean, there's been the talk of running a South Shore line down through the Munster area, down through the St. John area, and clear to Lowell. And I personally know people who live in Lowell who work in Chicago, and they would have to take a bus, or they would have to drive their car to St. John, get on a bus there, take the bus to the South Shore station in Hammond or East Chicago, and get off there, and then head, go into the city. Well, I mean that's a long day's journey.
well, there is that, and you know, really the commuter bus service was part of the Easy Go service, so that shut down. Anyway,
I think the region is ripe for rail expansion. I mean, if you look at a map of commuter rail in the Chicago area, you see coming out of Chicago in Illinois, just, all these tendrils of these rail lines, and then in Indiana, it's just this one line that goes along the lake.
Yeah, it just goes.
So it's obvious. If you look at that map, you'll say, boy, where do we need more rail? You would say, going
Of course,
the central
gotta
southern
realize,
part of the
like,
county.
That, say Cook and Will counties have more people in them than the entire state of Indiana. So,
But Cook County in particular is where the jobs are. So Bill Hanna's idea was, you look at economic development from the traditional perspective. Let's expand what's here and let's bring more jobs here. But he's saying, let's open up a path to where the jobs are now,
Right.
and
so that people
prove
can
that
live.
you've got the
So
workforce.
that people can live here
Well,
and
let's-
make it easier to commute.
well, let's be realistic. about it too. The jobs that are downtown Chicago pay more than the jobs that are in Northwest Indiana, and they are always going to.
Well, there was a study that the Northern Indiana Commuter Transportation District, which operates the South Shore,
yeah.
put together this study, and it had, for umpteen sectors of the economy, there was only one in which the jobs in Northwest Indiana paid more on average than the jobs in Cook County, and that was manufacturing.
Because
So
the steel industry.
exactly.
Well, you
And the
get your steel
refinery.
mill and oil refineries. Yeah.
So, there you go. So, the idea, and they paid, in most instances far more
Yeah.
than in Northwest Indiana. So the idea is, you send the people there, they're able to, if they're able to ride rather than drive, then they're able to do work
Yeah.
while they're, or relax or whatever while they're.
Read the paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Behold.
Read the Times, yeah.
Mhm.
While they're commuting, and so the day is not as burdensome for them as if they're driving the whole time. And,
Well,
and
plus, if you drive, let's face it, if you drive into Chicago on a daily basis to work, you work 8 hours a day, you're going to end up paying $30 a day in parking fees
not to mention the cost of owning the car
and the
operating it,
gasoline.
plus the pollution that all of these generate.
Mhm.
So, there's
Most of our pollution, though, comes from the people just passing through at the Borman.
I don't know because
Now, there was a study done on that because Lake and Porter counties are the only counties left in Indiana that still have to have emissions testing. It used to be that I believe Floyd and Clark counties,
Right.
they're very far south,
Mm.
had to have that too. The ones around Louisville, Indianapolis never had to have it, strangely enough. But the study showed that Indianapolis actually generated much more pollution than Northwest Indiana.
Well, the problem is that Northwest Indiana is within that Chicago area. We are basically lumped in with Cook County, up
well,
up
and,
to
and
Wisconsin.
that's the question.
So-
Do you
and
do you
the-
get
and that's-
punished for the air
and-
that blows from the west?
And that's
You know?
actually the object of a lawsuit that is being filed by
Exactly.
the
Now
state
there's that story
Attorney
today.
General Zellers in our area today on that very topic, making the argument, the case that Lake and Porter County shouldn't have to pay for the sins of Chicago. So we'll see how that goes.
But I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll
And-
talk about that next week.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, but I just went and had my car tested for, the emissions tested, and it's gotten so efficient that I was in and out of there in 10 minutes. And I don't mind doing it. It's just that I don't understand why we have to do it when there's another county that is basically the tail that wags the Indiana dog. I'm talking about Marion County, that is more polluted than we are, and they don't have to do it. I mean, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, but they don't see it that way.
Well,
That's all the time we have this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another political roundtable.